Welcome to this week's edition of the Webster Tarpley program here on Unbound Radio. And it's the afternoon of Tuesday, the 27th of August. And we're approaching August 31st, September 1st, 1939. That was the beginning of World War II. And, of course, it was in August of 1914 that World War I got going in a big way. So we're in that time of year when these catastrophic actions actually occur. And as if by, well, not by coincidence, the Russian Foreign Ministry today has talked about catastrophic results of a NATO attack on Syria. Let me premise this by saying, never could you see the essence of the world problem laid out before you. The mad dog imperialists, once again up to their old tricks, the moral, epistemological, political bankruptcy of Obama and his crew. Obviously, there are factions in the White House. There are some people who are more bellicose. You have the Kerry, the skull and bones warmonger. I think I might have been the only person in the world to remind everybody that skull and bones means war. And Bonesman Kerry from the death cult and the tomb and the order and all the rest of that. Kerry came in, and lo and behold, within just a few months, we're once again on the brink of war. The Viper, Susan Rice, also obviously a key voice for aggression. These people need to be impeached. And on the other hand, though, you do have still some resistance, right? The Pentagon, I think the Pentagon realizes that if they keep going with this, they're going to have mutinies. In other words, the U.S. military, as we've heard, is at the breaking point. And if any land combat emerges, and even prolonged air and sea combat, you're going to have political problems with the armed forces after a dozen years of useless, insane, futile, suicidal foreign wars. Dempsey and somebody, I think, Valerie Jarrett. This might be the time for Valerie Jarrett to get on the World Historical Scoreboard and tell Obama, this will be the end of you, Obama. You go and do this, you will be impeached. You will be gone. I can imagine people telling Obama, oh, you're in trouble now, but let's have a nice little war, a splendid little war, and you'll get the rally round effect. The people will begin to like you again, and you can use it to beat the Republicans. You can say, how can you shut down the government, and how can you cut off funding when our forces are in action against the iniquitous Assad in the Middle East? You can see how that would work, except it won't work that way in the medium to longer run. In the medium to longer run, the Republicans will turn on him and impeach him, and they'll impeach him for the obvious thing, supporting Al-Qaeda, entering into Syria, intervening in Syria in support of the Al-Qaeda terrorist rebels. So that's the one side. The other side of the world problem is the only thing that seems to break us out of this mode is a mass movement in the United States. And lo and behold, we do have some good news on that front. We've got the Tax Wall Street Party with Randy Credico on the ballot for the general election, November 5th, all the way to November in New York City. So we'll be back in a second here on the Webster Tarpley program. Welcome back to the Webster Tarpley program. Got to rush along now. Lots of stuff to cover. We want to do justice to this Syrian war emergency, and we also want to have the hopeful note of the agitation in New York. The only way you break out of this block universe that we're in, this historical blind alley, the only way to get out without a world war is a mass movement in the United States. Just that simple. So that's up to you. Get on Twitter, get on Facebook, get on talk radio, take back the airwaves, bamboozle Limbaugh's call screener, and get out the message, no war and no depression. In other words, the We've got to break out of this pattern. You know the pattern, 1930s. Depression, dictatorship, war. Break out of it now. And you got to break out before the depression turns into dictatorship. I must say also, we can thank all the people who thought that the great issue in the world in the summer of 2013 was Edward Snowden and their privacy. Their privacy in which, in many cases, they don't do anything, but they want their privacy, right? Even though it is an empty privacy. It's not like they're plotting some kind of mass rebellion or mass movement against the powers of finance capital. Most of them, frankly, are not doing that, right? So their privacy, although should be protected by the Constitution, of course, when we get beyond the formalisms and into the content, we find that their privacy is not a positive factor in world history. So there's still a chance, I hope, to change that. So mobilize. Don't sit around and complain. I'm always intrigued when I see articles saying, oh, here are the 13 reasons why we know that the decision to attack Syria has already been made. Oh, it's all planned in advance. These are arguments for cowards. These are lazy bums who don't want to do anything. Those are all great reasons to sit back, complain, and let the world go to hell. So here we are. We are on the verge, once again, of international anarchy, but in a more extreme form than we had it in 2003. We have the complete decadence of Europe, the governments of Europe, which in those days, 10 years ago, were saying no to war, Western Europe, NATO Europe. They are now either saying yes or they're willing to go along, as in the case of Germany. Russia, we must celebrate and thank Putin, Lavrov, Rogozin, and the rest of the Russian leadership. They are a pillar of sanity. They are asserting the peaceful coexistence and war avoidance in the current situation. Now let's just go through some of the most relevant points. I refer you back to some of my other recent broadcasts. The White House on this past weekend started to try to figure out ways to do a unilateral attack or an attack by a coalition of the willing without going through the UN Security Council. And of course, this coalition of the willing, it's not a coalition of the willing, it's a coalition of the duped, the fanatics, the bribed, and the blackmailed, but they're trying to do it. And they come up with the Kosovo model, the Kosovo bombing, really the bombing of Serbia in March of 1999, that can be a great model for how to do this and make it sound legal, because it was illegal, right? Under what we have as international law, if you don't go to the Security Council, it's illegal. In my view, it may be illegal even if you do go to the Security Council. But if you don't go to the Security Council, it's illegal for sure. The Kosovo model, they said, the Kosovo model. Here's why the Kosovo model does not apply. In the year 1999, the president of Russia was a feckless drunk. It was Yeltsin, a Russian puppet, a buffoon, a drunk. Now you have the most formidable and the most capable statesman in the world. Putin is your adversary, and he plays his cards quite well. So you can forget about that advantage. In the case of Serbia, it turned out that their obsolete air defense systems were useless, that the country was defenseless against air attack. In the case of Syria, that does not seem to be the case. Obviously, we'll find out soon, but up to now, it looks like the S-300 in some version is deployed. That will be quite formidable. When these American destroyers get 200 kilometers off the coast to launch their Tomahawk cruise missiles, they will be in range of the Yakontsk Russian-made sea-skimming cruise missile designed to sink aircraft carriers. Now, if we had a cage match between a ship armed with the Tomahawk and a ship armed with the Yakontsk, I would bet on the Yakontsk because it's much more recent, it's much more formidable, it's much bigger. So the last American aircraft carrier was the Hornet, sunk in October of 1942. The last destroyer of the United States was the Callahan, sunk at the end of July 1945. Since then, neither destroyer nor aircraft carrier has been sunk. That more or less corresponds with U.S. global hegemony. Maybe that era is ending. Certainly the era of bombarding from the air with impunity, what we had in Serbia when there were no air casualties and Libya no air casualties, that I think is wrong. That is gone. An expert from Sky Television that I monitored in the last day or two has estimated that the British Defense Ministry thinks that if you fly over Syria with airplanes, and this is a specific variation, this is probably not what the U.S. would want to do, but it's almost necessarily what the British and the French would have to do if they were leading the charge. They would expect to lose 40 to 50 combat aircraft in a week. And when I put that on Twitter, some guy said that's the entire Royal Air Force in 1 week. So those levels of attrition would be unsustainable. So therefore, whenever you see Hollande or Fabius or Haig or Cameron or Davutoglu or Erdogan, when they're demanding an attack, they're demanding that the U.S. take the lead. They're willing to fight to the last American. Those Appalachian poor whites and black and Hispanic ghetto victims from the inner city. That's who's going to die if this goes bad. Anyway, back to the Kosovo model. In those days, it was Yeltsin, a fool. Now it's Putin. He's the most formidable. Serbia had no defenses. Syria seems to have some rather formidable defenses. The American people today, unlike 1999, are absolutely sick of war. There's absolute war weariness. They're disgusted with this foreign policy. The Reuters poll says 60% of the American population says no, don't intervene. And if they're asked, do you want to intervene to help the Syrian terrorist rebels, 89% say no thanks, let them fight their own battles. So any politician that gets on the wrong side of that is impeachment bait. That means you, Obama, and again, not that I can do it, it's going to be done by reactionary to fascist Republicans. And this will not help the country, but this is where we're going. So Obama, relent. Obama, cease and desist. Obama, pull back. Save yourself. Don't go over the falls for this. Right? Don't leap into the abyss. Don't leap into the crater of this particular volcano, right? Like Empedocles on Etna. Don't do it. So Kosovo doesn't work. You got Putin. You got a country that can defend itself. You got the American people war weary. And the Republicans, this time are more clever. They're not going to try to impeach Obama before the war. They're going to wait for Obama to make the attack, destroy his relation with his own base, and alienate, antagonize his own supporters, and then go in for the kill with impeachment sometime in 6 months or 9 months or whatever it takes, right? Once the effect of the war has been felt. There are two parallels, however, that do hold up. One is that Kosovo, the bombing of Serbia over the Kosovo pretext, was launched by Al Gore, March 1999, without reference to Clinton. Clinton was not consulted. He was told they didn't want Primakov making a peace deal. In that case, it was done by Al Gore to please his friend Prince Charles, it is widely thought. And the other one, the 100,000, right? We were told in the case of Kosovo that 100,000 Kosovars had been killed by the evil Serbs, and that turned out to be a complete fraud. It turned out that there had been some killings, right? The estimate is 2,000 to 3,000. So 100,000. Somehow we're back to the 100,000 in this case. And of course, we're told that, of course, if 100,000 died, it meant that Assad personally killed them all. What about those death squads? What about those Al-Qaeda guys? What about the emirs? What about the cannibals, the chemical weapons, and all this other stuff? No, forget that, right? So we're back in the Orwellian echo chamber. Hollande and Fabius, right? Vichy and Suez, or Suez and Vichy, as you want it. Fabius is ready to fight to the last American. Hollande says that France is ready to punish the perpetrators. I think there's a problem going on, an epistemological problem for Hollande is between arme chimique and arme chimérique. That is between chemical weapons and chimerical or chimerical weapons, the ones that don't exist. This is the French position. They have what passes for an aircraft carrier. That would be Yakontsk bait in the eastern Mediterranean. More egregious in some ways is Haig, the British Foreign Secretary. He is a top warmonger. He is trying to spin out a theory of legality, and I guess the State Department is going to go for this too. It goes like this. Normally, the UN Security Council is the touchstone for legality in international affairs. This is what it is, right? I don't agree with it, but this is what they all agreed to be bound by, that the decisions of the Permanent Five of the UN Security Council constitute international law. All right. But now they say there's a higher law to which you can appeal, and the higher law is if chemical weapons are used, you short-circuit the UN Security Council, you go directly to the attack. But wait a minute. There is that pesky phase where you'd have to prove who did it, who's the perpetrator, right? Before you punish, you've got to establish guilt. In this case, of course, the death squads are the prime suspect, right? Why would Assad use chemical weapons when he's winning the war? He's cleaning up, he's mopping up, and then once the UN inspectors get to Damascus, he's supposedly so dumb and so such a bungler that he decides to use the chemical weapons. Anyway, chemical weapons, they say, is the argument from Haig and the State Department, will short-circuit the UN Security Council. You can avoid them. And responsibility to protect. This takes us back to those awful UN resolutions, right? The fruits, I would add, of the Medvedev era. In the summer of 2011, spring-summer, we had the Libya resolution, and we also had the Ivory Coast resolution. That was another important one. Both of these embody the responsibility to protect. In other words, a violation. This is a very clear case of a UN Security Council resolution which blatantly violates the UN Charter. The UN Charter says external interference in the internal affairs of sovereign states is prohibited. These are purely internal affairs. This is what General Sisi said a couple of weeks ago, right? What Egypt does on Egyptian territory is none of your business but out. The Syrian position is the same. The Chinese position would be the same, and the Russian, I believe. So I hope they vote their positions on that and not cave in to blackmail from Skull and Bones Kerry. But it's those resolutions. So we're told now that there's international law, but then there's a collection of precedents, and this is now international customary law. Bad idea, right? In other words, that can, the precedents can be all kinds of garbage. The main problem is that the resolutions from 2011, Libya and Ivory Coast, are in blatant violation of the Charter. And this is where the UN system breaks down. You would need a kind of Supreme Court with real power in the UN system to be able to strike down UN Security Council resolutions that violate the Charter, as they do in this case. So that is part of the situation. We'll be back in just a minute on the Webster Tarpley program, Unbound Radio. Welcome back to the Webster Tarpley program here on Unbound Radio. It's the afternoon of Tuesday, the 27th of August. Now we're looking at the growing threat of international anarchy. It's Tuesday. We're being told leaks through NBC News. The bombing begins on Thursday, we're told. May not be optimum time in terms of the phases of the moon, right? These cowards like to attack in the night at the time of the new moon, right? They're the opposite of vampires. They're a different breed of vampire. But that's what it is. Now, before we leave, dear friends, Cameron and Haig. Cameron is also spouting this thing that it's going to be legal because we're fighting chemical weapons and we're fighting to protect civilians, right? Our responsibility to protect. Again, the problem is you can't execute the perpetrator unless you've had the trial, and this they are unwilling to do. After all this brouhaha, all the whining and demanding of UN inspectors, the UN inspectors get there, and then Susan Rice, the Viper, this past weekend, she's obviously the senior administration official who says there's no doubt Syria did it, the government did it, and it's too late for the inspectors. So why even have the inspectors? By the way, this is like Hitler. This is like Hitler in the various meetings going up to Munich, right? The Berchtesgaden, Godesberg, and Munich, right? There's a series of meetings, and the first meeting, Hitler says, here's what I want, and Chamberlain says, I'll try to give it to you. By the second meeting, Hitler says, that's not enough anymore, right? 2 days have gone by, or whatever it is, a week has gone by, but that's not enough anymore. Now I've escalated my demand. So that's right. She's reading from the Hitler book of diplomacy. So that's what you've got. Now, the Russian position. Again, it deserves, I think, everybody's support and appreciation. We have the spokesman of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Lukashevich, telling NATO and the West, reminding them of the 2003 weapons of mass destruction fiasco in Iraq and warning them against making a tragic mistake. Tragic mistake by bombing Syria. Now, we've got Lavrov. He points out in the press conference in Moscow yesterday, there is no proof against Assad. There's no proof of any kind. And he warns NATO that if you start this bombing, you will be committing a grave violation of international law. You will be on a dangerous path and a very slippery slope, bombing Syria without the approval of the UN Security Council. Today we have Rogozin. This is the former Russian representative to NATO. He's been in the trenches. He says, the Western powers in the Islamic world act like a monkey with a hand grenade. Good. The chief monkey, Kerry, Bonesman Kerry, of Skull and Bones, to make it quite obvious, he had this explosive speech yesterday, this interesting combination of bombast and cowardice, typical Skull and Bones. He goes through this thing that the attack on the chemical attack is morally obscene. This was the fashionable language of the Vietnam era when Kerry obviously got his formation. So it's obscene, morally obscene. And however, there was no action. The headline for this briefing by Kerry at the State Department on Monday afternoon was supposedly that he was going to announce the attack, and he didn't. So that was interesting, and he seemed to be trying to compensate with the bombast for what he was not able to offer with the concrete weapons. Moallem, the Syrian foreign minister, specifically denies that the Syrian government used these chemical weapons and promises that there will be the defense of Syria with all its available means. If Obama pushes forward with this, the word from the Republicans before too long will be, you see, he's a Muslim, he's defending Al-Qaeda, he's got to be impeached. We'll have a few words about the military aspects maybe just before the end of the show. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the Webster Tarpley program. Got to push ahead rapidly here on the afternoon of August 27th. The point being that we've just gone through much at least of the Syrian situation. We're on the brink of international anarchy. We're on the brink of a general war. Ironically, compared to Iraq 10 years ago, this time the geopolitical implications are far greater, given the immediate involvement of Russia and Iran, with China somewhat in the background. But there, compared to Iraq, you did not have this 10 years ago, but now you do. And the mobilization to stop the war is less. Now, therefore, the mass movement, this is what we're here to help provide. There is a candidate who's running for office who has a strong anti-war position. It is Randy Credico. And the good news, to balance all of this horror that we've just been going through, is that Credico is now certified on the final general election ballot in New York City, November 5th, 2013. He's in the Democratic primary, of course, for September 10th. But thanks to the tremendous sacrifice of many people, including the listeners to this program, who have generously come forward with contributions and volunteering, we will have Credico on the ballot all the way to November, no matter what happens in the Democratic primary. So you've got a vehicle to have a candidate who's going to say no to this war and really mean it. So to get the full lowdown on that, let's go to our friend Daniela Walls, who has been doing so much
Webster.
with the campaign. How you doing?
You were just talking about Syria. Randy texted me a message a few seconds ago. He said, communicate this to Webster on Syria. Can I read it?
Please do.
He said, if the U.S. continues its policy of genocide with its horrific vehicles of murder by drones and by bombs on innocent civilians, it is now laying the groundwork to justify more of it in Syria. ... Don't buy this. Kerry is playing the same BS card that Colin Powell did to justify the genocide in Iraq. Don't buy it. I challenge all my mayoral opponents to denounce Obama and his fellow war criminals. That's what he just texted.
Great. Excellent.
So he's with us on this one.
That's very good. No, and that's an important focus because that gives you, I don't think you're going to have anybody, you're not going to have Terry McAuliffe in Virginia saying any such thing. But so there we go. So there's a fighting candidate.
Even though it's a local mayoral race, there's so much attention on this race that he's planning on bringing it up in the debates.
Nothing in New York is local. New York is the capital of the world. The UN is there. Nothing local. But tell us all about it now. We've got to hear the good news.
Well, it's
first,
official.
Right?
It's official. You set it up. I heard you. But it's official. The Tax Wall Street Party is officially on the ballot in New York City. What do you think about that?
It's great. That's what I've been telling the listeners.
I know. I'm just so excited. The letter came yesterday on Monday morning from the New York Board of Elections with a big state seal on it informing us that our new party, the Tax Wall Street Party, and Randy Credico, the candidate, are on the November 5th general election ballot for the mayor's race. So on November 5th, voters in New York will have the choice between a Democratic candidate for mayor, a Republican candidate, and they will have another independent option to vote for Randy Credico on the Tax Wall Street Party ticket.
Fantastic. And what this means, of course, is that you now have another reason to vote for Credico. If you want to protest this war insanity, if you're in New York, come out and vote for Credico on the 10th of September and on the 5th of November as an anti-war vote. He's the only candidate who's telling you no war with Syria. Right?
Yes,
so far.
He's also an anti-war vote, absolutely. And I would say that for many reasons, there's never been a better time to go with an independent choice. Not just in New York City, but if you are in New York City, you're not just relegated to protesting Wall Street. You can now vote to tax Wall Street and for the thorough program that comes along with that can revolutionize the city for all New Yorkers. Not just the rich New Yorkers, as has been the MO under this Bloomberg administration. And the Democrats this time around won't be any better than Bloomberg, with Quinn, Bloomberg's protege, and de Blasio, the left wing of the Wall Street financial oligarchy. All these Democrats have been chosen to ensure that nothing changes. Randy, like you said, is also on the Democratic primary, so you have a chance to vote for him there on September 10th, and then on November 5th in the general election.
So you can vote for him twice, and it's legal.
And it's legal. Yeah. So, yeah, if you want political change, this is the biggest bang for your buck, as you've been saying. This vote for Randy and the Tax Wall Street Party program and Randy Credico's program. We are expecting the Tax Wall Street Party to do much better in November than the spurious polls the Marist and Quinnipiac are saying that we're going to do. Because I'm already getting hundreds of personal emails from people saying that they're getting out on November 5th and September 10th, if only to cast a protest vote for Randy. People are already coming forward and saying that. I've got hundreds of emails of people saying they can't wait to get out and vote. So I'm just here to urge everybody not to go with voter fatigue or voter apathy or simply say that you're not voting, to go with this protest vote for Randy and to stop being disillusioned with the system, and as you say, Webster, endlessly complaining, because this is the time for activism and changing the system. You can pull this lever, like you said, and it's legal. And if we could, and also, like, if we can get on this ballot in New York City for one of the most visible elections in recent history, this is a huge election with the eyes of the world on it. And we did this with only a few $1,000s and committed volunteers. This can be done anywhere. Right. There's no excuse.
Right.
The proof is that we just did this. And
Daniela, let's say now again, people are listening and they want to know what can they do to join in, to volunteer, to contribute, to get in touch with you. Let's go through the palette, the array of of ththings they can do, because I think we can only go through this once because we've got limited time today because of Syria.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we're on the November ballot. We're going to transition right into a campaign. Now we're really going to need your help. Our greatest need is still contributions. Whatever people can donate will be deeply appreciated and used frugally. You can donate to credico2013.org/donate, CREDICO 2013.org/donate. There's an easy to find donate button right on the homepage of Randy's website, credico2013.org. You can also donate to the Tax Wall Street Party. There is a donate button on that website at taxwallstreetparty.org. TAXWALLSTREETPARTY.org. And then lastly, we're going to need a lot of creative grassroots actions to get noticed now with the help of volunteers, because the mainstream corporate media is going to work overtime to shut us out. They do not like what has happened here at all. I'm going to keep a current list of what the campaign needs. I'm not going to go through it right now, but it's going to be on the website at taxwallstreetparty.org. And if you can fill any of these needs, please contact me at taxwallstreetparty@gmail.com. That should be all the info, Webster.
Okay. Now, do we have any large-scale media buys coming from Credico? I believe you have an ad in one of the main left magazines. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, we just bought a big ad in The Nation magazine. And it explains everything in the program, all the things he's been saying, like ending. I'll put the ad up on the website so people can read it, but we're going to run it in a few big places, and ending, his absolutely not, dancing around it, ending the racist stop and frisk policies. A guaranteed job for every New Yorker with the FDR-style jobs program. Keep in mind, as I'm telling you this is all paid for with his Wall Street sales tax. So living wages, increase the minimum wage, free college education for city residents, free medical care for everyone, restore citywide rent control, a moratorium on foreclosures, protect small businesses and entrepreneurs from greedy landlords, stop the closure of New York City hospitals, fire stations, libraries, and schools. Randy's in the middle of this big fight now with the Rudin family, who's the main sponsor of Quinn, who the Rudin family bought, St. Vincent's Hospital when there was the storm, Superstorm Sandy. Mm-hmm. St. Vincent's got flooded. And do you remember Webster this?
Yes, of course. There's Superstorm Sandy, the end of October.
Yeah. Well, I know you know about Superstorm Sandy. I didn't know if you know that St. Vincent's was so badly flooded they used as an excuse the Rudin family to buy St. Vincent's and turn it into condos instead of repairing it back into a hospital, and that serves the entire downtown area. So, and the Rudin family is the main contributor to Quinn's campaign. So, Randy's in the fight to, keep local hospitals, and he's very upset that they're turning St. Vincent's, which is an historic landmark, into condos and not keeping it a hospital.
Now, unless I'm mistaken, there's also the question of the public library, right? New York City Public Library, Lennox Astor and Tilden Trust, right? The Lions at 42nd Street. But now
they're buying all these libraries and shutting them down.
But specifically now, we're going to have Credico going toe-to-toe with de Blasio and Quinn and Thompson and the rest of these people in Brooklyn. Am I not right?
Yes, there's going to be. I don't have the information in front of me, so I forget the address.
Yeah, let me tell you. It's.
You have it in front of you.
It's at On Friday evening, Credico is going to be at a debate specifically about this library issue. And it's sponsored by Citizens Defending Libraries.
Exactly.
And that's in the Kane, Kane, the Kane Street Synagogue in downtown Brooklyn. And the goal of this is to save the New York Public Library, no more closings of libraries. And this, obviously, the only serious approach is the Wall Street sales tax, because if you don't have that, you'll never have the revenue to save these libraries. So I'm looking for Credico to clean up against the Brand X competition, these fakers, right? The pseudo-left de Blasio, the Bloomberg clone Quinn, and then the rest of them tagging along.
Well, before this debate, they had a online this organization had an online thing where the candidates could fill out their answers, and they liked Randy's answers so much for his plan to stop these libraries being taken over for private development. And this is, like I said, you said a rampant problem across the city that Randy, they liked his answers so much that this group is coming out and endorsing him. It's his first big endorsement, this organization to save the libraries.
Citizens Defending Libraries. That's a
Citizens
great
Defending
endorsement.
Libraries.
And I think there are some other library groups that may then follow suit, right? Once it's clear that Credico is the defender of public libraries. These are absolutely critical institutions, huh? Benjamin Franklin founded one. They're critical for civilization. So there you go with Credico. There's lots of content to vote for. You're voting against the Syrian war, and you're voting to make Wall Street pay. So we got about a minute. Tell us how it looks otherwise.
We keep hearing in the mainstream media that there's an economic recovery, I guess, and this is BS. This is a one-sided economic recovery for the financial oligarch, and Ben Bernanke shells out $85 billion a month for worthless assets. And imagine if $85 billion a month went to our productive economy, like maglev rail, or this cool new Elon Musk Hyperloop that I was reading about that sucks you from New York to LA in 45 minutes. Right. I don't know if you've heard about that, but to get something like this started, I was reading Elon Musk estimates it'll be about $7 billion. And Bernanke gives $85 billion to Wall Street every month for nothing. If we tax Wall Street at only 1%, this will bring in trillions annually, and so much will be possible, Webster. But the only way is to tax Wall Street. And ultimately, in our program, nationalize the Federal Reserve. But you're still going to get people that want to protect poor Wall Street.
Let me just add, even tonight, right, out in, I think in Bayside, right, in Bay Terrace, Credico will be at the Bay Terrace Jewish Center in Bay Terrace. It's way out. It's by the Cross Island Parkway, right? It's beyond Douglaston, way out in Queens. Right. Anyway, so very active campaign, going toe-to-toe with these other clowns. Thank you, Daniela. We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye-bye, Webster. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to the Webster Tarpley program, our last segment. Let me just once again thank all the listeners to this program who, with their contributions and other assistance, have made it possible for Credico to be on the ballot as the tax Wall Street party all the way to November. And that gives us an anti-war vehicle right in the heart of the world communication system. Nerve center of that, of course, New York City. So that you're going to get some bang for the buck on that. Right? These are good investments. Get that Nation magazine if you see it. Take a look at the ad from the Credico campaign. That one is focused on the Democratic Party. Democratic primary, September 10th. Get out and vote for Credico then, and prepare then for November 5th. But voting is the least of it. Right? You got to be out there campaigning. The event, as we said, on Credico on Friday is going to be at the Kane Street Synagogue in downtown Brooklyn. Kane, like Citizen Kane. Kane Street Synagogue, downtown Brooklyn. 8 p.m. I think Friday evening. Check it. These are all on the Credico campaign, Credico2013.org. So there's that, and then even tonight, the 27th of August, that's tonight, Bay Terrace Jewish Center. It's very close to the Cross Island Parkway. It's way out, right? It's near the city line in northwest Queens. So these are occasions where Credico goes up against Wiener, Quinn, de Blasio, and so forth. We've also got interesting stories about de Blasio. De Blasio has made a big deal out of his plan to provide 20,000 affordable housing units per year. He says 200,000 over 10 years. It's really not very much. But there is some question about whether that's a cover story for gentrification and slum clearance, in the sense of breaking up these neighborhoods and gentrifying them and bringing in housing which is not affordable, but which is rather unaffordable, targeted for rich parasites and predators. So you'll see all of that coming up from the Credico campaign. Now, back to the question of Syria. Credico, if you can do anything for Credico, that's obviously going to help the cause of peace and the resistance to this international anarchy. I recommend, once again, get busy. Twitter is there for anybody, right? There's no excuse not to be on Twitter. If you don't know what to tweet, get yourself a Twitter account, go to my Twitter and retweet what I put up, right? And eventually you'll be doing your own, which will also be quite good. Find interesting things on Twitter. Here's one I found. Zbigniew Brzezinski. Gold is where you find it. Zbigniew Brzezinski. He says, the geopolitical content of Kosovo in 1999 and Syria now are vastly different. We must not rush into a bellicose, foolhardy response a la 2003, as we did in 2003. Okay. Geopolitical content are different. I proposed the 4 differences and the 2 similarities, that both are based on a coup in the White House and both based on lies. But Brzezinski is also right. The geopolitics are different. In those days, Russia was very weak. It's not so weak anymore. Leadership much better. We must not rush into a bellicose, foolhardy response as we did in 2003. Good. All the neocons, of course, are warmongering, but Elliot Cohen, the neocon's neocon, he says, this surgical stuff. Don't talk to me about surgical strikes. We need a big war. Lots of civilians killed, says Elliot Cohen. Hit the Air Force, hit the airports, hit the air defense. That will mean lots of civilian casualties. Who cares, says Elliot Cohen. His eyes obviously fixed on the Israeli needs. Bolton, another neocon, has an interesting variation. Bolton says anything Obama does will be worse than doing nothing. So that, I think you can see the impeachment story sort of leering through the interstices of the Obama rationale for bombing. And we have to warn Obama formally now. An attack will mean, Obama, that you antagonize what remains of your base. You will cut yourself off from your supporters. This will open the door to impeachment. And the Republicans know this. This is one of the reasons they're interested in conning you into this. It will also trigger a process leading to a regional war in the Middle East. If the Israelis bomb Russian military shipments, that gets you a big escalation. They will be using, if it comes to bombing, there's a Royal Air Force base on Akrotiri, Cyprus. If that gets hit by Scuds from Syria, or indeed Yakonsk from Syria, that's going to be a big deal. So stay tuned, and we'll see you soon. Tarpley.net, Webster G. Tarpley, Twitter.